stop. If you're waiting for your lawn to turn green before you start doing your spring cleanup, then you're already behind the 8 ball. You're about to spend a bunch of money on a bunch of products that may or may not work, all because you ultimately missed the one signal that your lawn is going to be giving you, either right now or in the near future. Every year, it's the same thing, right? You see the green, you get motivated, and you get to work. And then what happens? 2 months later, you've got the crabgrass, you've got your clover, your dandelions that are all poking through, and you spend the next or rest of the summer trying to get rid of them. And it's frustrating. It's an uphill battle that we just can't seem to win. But what if I told you that there was a secret number, a wake-up call of sorts for your yard? A almost exact number to act on for a flawless yard. Stick around, because I'm about to share with you the 55-degree rule and the simple checklist you need to win the fight. Now, let's be honest. When is the right time to start doing lawn care? For most of us, it's probably a shot in the dark. I know it used to be for me. I look outside, you see the first nice Saturday with the green grass growing, and you think, hey, it's gotta be time. Or you see your neighbor out there and he's out there mowing, so I might as well get out there and mow too. And another pretty common trap is when you see your green, luscious yard just growing, and you think, well, it's growing, so now I better take care of it. That sure seems logical, doesn't it? The problem with that philosophy is that by this time, you've already lost some of the battle against some of these weeds. Underneath those beautiful green, luscious grass tips, the crabgrass and your dandelion, clover, whatever other weeds you're dealing with, are already starting to do their germination and becoming established. And this is why we get frustrated. We spend our summers pulling weeds or spraying a post-emergent selective herbicide mix, and we're just stuck in this revolving loop of always playing defense. And with playing all of this defense, you're also wasting one of your most precious resources that you have, your time. But what if you could stop a lot of this invasion before it even starts? What if you could flip the script and become more on the offense? Now, this is where the guessing gets taken out of the equation and we start winning. Forget the air temperature, forget what your grass looks like, forget what your neighbor Dave's doing. The only thing that really matters is the temperature of your soil. And the magic number you need to remember in most areas for lawn success is 55 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit. Now, why is 55 degrees important to remember? Because 55 degrees is that trigger point. This is where your mainstream weeds, such as your crabgrass, your dandelions, your clover, and other various weeds that are out there in cool season grasses, will start to germinate. Once your soil temperature is at that 55-degree Fahrenheit for a consistent amount of time, then it's game on for all these bad boys. Now, this is why the 55-degree rule is your secret weapon. It lets you get ahead of the problem instead of waiting till you see the weeds. We can now use a pre-emergent herbicide to help combat it. Now, let me explain that a little bit. A pre-emergent herbicide doesn't kill the weeds that are already there. A pre-emergent herbicide is the one that we spray before we get to that 55 degrees, probably somewhere around maybe your 48 or your 50 degree soil temperatures. And we create a thin layer, an invisible barrier, if you will, to allow the seed heads from those various weeds not become established. And at this point, we're no longer fighting the weed itself, we are fighting the seed itself. And I think this is where a lot of the homeowners out there, including myself, I used to be more on the reactive and I'm working to become more of the offensive. And that's why I'm sharing some of this information with you guys. Okay, so 55 degrees is the magic number. You might be asking, how do I know my soil temp and what exactly do I do? And this is your action plan. When you hit that 48 to 50 degree soil temperature consistently, now it is truly go time. And here's the exact checklist that I follow. We can't follow a rule if we really have no way to measure it. And you've got really two pretty easy options. One is just get your classic thermometer, or a meat probe thermometer, if you will. The key to this is to get a real reading. You don't want just the surface level. You want to stick that thing down probably 2 to 4 inches and let it sit there for a couple minutes, just like you're taking your temperature. If you got a fever or anything like that, you want to get a pretty even number. It shouldn't be fluctuating a whole bunch. And you'll want to take a few samples throughout your yard. Get some sunspots, get some shade spots, go through a various pattern in your yard and get just a handful of measurements and get the average of where your yard is. And the second may be a little bit easier. There are a lot of online tools, websites that you can go to, and you can type in your zip code and you can get the soil temperature map for your area. Now that might be more of like a region level. The meat probe or thermometer is going to get you a lot more localized and realistic data because you're taking it for your yard and not necessarily a way bigger area like a zip code. So now that we have the knowledge of what our soil temperatures are, now we can start looking at a pre-emergent herbicide application. And if you end up waiting until your soil is at that 55 degree temperature, then you're probably cutting it pretty close. And applying that pre-emergent when you're at that 48 to 50 degree temperature, it gives the product more time to be effectively watered in and create that barrier on the soil surface. There are several different products out there. You can get a granular that you use with just a broadcast spreader, or you can get a liquid that you use with a pump sprayer or a backpack sprayer. Something to be cognizant of is most pre-emergent herbicides, if you're planning on doing a seeding project, could inhibit your seeding project from actually germinating. So there is a specific product out there that I use, and it's called Tenacity, and it is safe for overseeding or for a seeding project. So that could be a recommendation, but make sure you read the label of whatever product you're using to make sure that you're within regulation that is set forth by the manufacturer, and to make sure that you're applying it correctly. So now we found our soil temperatures. We're in that range for applying our pre-emergent. So now what's next? Now we are not quite to full-on grow mode yet. So now's your time to go out there and clean up the matted look from the winter. Clean up your twigs, whatever leaves might have grown in. Try to rake up some of that matted down grass to get it to breathe, to give it its best success for when we do hit that perfect germination period and when we really start putting on that growth. We've got our cleanup done. Now it's time to start moving into the equipment. So the equipment's been sitting all winter long, so now it's time to start doing the tune-ups. And if you have a gas-powered machine, we're starting to look at doing our oil changes, checking our air filters, and doing just a routine maintenance, or having a shop do it, however that works. But if you have the electric route, obviously you don't have either one of those. So now, same as a gas-powered, now is the time to sharpen our blades, at least inspect our blades, and make sure that they are sharp, or replace them with brand new blades. For me personally, I do take a grinder to them throughout the season, but usually every year blades are cheap enough to where I'll probably just buy a new pair or a new blade every single season at the beginning, just to start fresh. Keep that old one just in case I happen to find a rock that I didn't know in the yard and whatever, and just have a spare on hand is usually a pretty good stroke. So now we've got all our power tools all good to go. We're all set and ready for when we do get to the mowing. Now we're on step 5, and step 5 is to aerate or to not aerate. Now, I think this one is a topic that gets talked about quite a bit. And in my personal opinion, if you don't have a heavily compacted area or your soil compaction, or if you don't have like a heavy clay component within your soil, you probably don't need to aerate. But if water pools up or you can't take a screwdriver and poke it down into your soil very easily, then maybe aeration would be a good stroke of business. If you're planning on doing an overseed project to just open up your availability for that seed to soil contact, you could do an aeration, but I wouldn't say that it is probably a necessity to go out and rent a piece of equipment or to pay to have that service done, since an aerator is probably not something that you have in your repertoire at your house. And now we're on to step 6, that first mow. Don't rush that first mow. Wait until your lawn is dry and has started to grow quite a bit. Then we make our first pass. Now remember, when you're doing your first mow, I like to mow probably a notch or two higher than I normally would through the active growing season. You gotta remember, we don't want to be in a situation where we're taking off more than 1/3 of that growing grass blade at any one time during a mow. Cutting off too much of the blade can shock your lawn pretty quickly. And coming out of hibernation, it is relatively fragile as it is. It still hasn't quite woke up yet, you know. When you get up from your slumber at night, you probably don't want to just hit the ground and do a marathon as soon as you wake up, do you? I didn't think so. So just think, rolling out of bed, sitting up, doing a little bit of just your morning, you know, stretching, waking up. That's what your yard wants too. So that's why we mow it a little bit higher on the first couple mows. And all right, well, that's your 6-step plan. And if you're finding this information to be helpful and you're ready to stop guessing and use a strategy that has worked for me, do me a favor and hit that like and follow button for me. It really helps the channel grow, and it tells me that you like a no-nonsense approach to be effective in the spring. Now, following the checklist is really just half the battle. The other half is avoiding the common traps that can sabotage your entire spring hard work and the 6 steps that we've already taken to get to this point. Mistake number 1 is fertilizing too early. As soon as the grass greens up, you'd probably be tempted to throw down a heavy dose of nitrogen in order to really wake up your yard. Now, this would probably be a mistake because most cool season grasses in the spring are working to rebuild their root system. And by throwing down a heavy dose of nitrogen specifically, you are telling the plant to soak that up and really work on trying to grow those blades. And we call that your top growth. And then the plant spends all that energy in establishing those green blades, and that takes away from the root development. And you'll probably get a lawn that looks very, very nice up top, but is fragile underneath the soil surface. And those roots going into summertime, we need to make sure that those are the healthy part to help us carry through that dry season. Now, for cool season grasses, if you were going to apply a light dose of a fertilizer, I would probably do it during my pre-emergent phase before the lawn is actively growing. Get that fertilizer down, and we're talking a light dose, not a heavy dose, more like a spoon feed, just to give it that little bit of kickstart. You know, kind of like when you're waking up in the morning and you take kind of like a cig of water or a sip of water or something like that. You know, you're not getting that full on, you know, country buffet breakfast as soon as you wake up in the morning. You're getting just a little bit to kind of get yourself get yourself going, get your head in a good mind space. Now, mistake number 2 is applying your pre-emergent too late. And I can't say this enough. That 55-degree mark that we're shooting for with that soil temperature isn't just a casual suggestion. That pre-emergent is a shield, not a sword. It can only stop the seed from becoming a plant. The second that crabgrass seedling is popping up through the soil, your pre-emergent is no longer effective, and we've missed the window. And at that point, we're back on the defensive side, and we have to rely on a post-emergent herbicide in order to target those species, which inevitably can still happen because not every pre-emergent is perfect, nor is your coverage completely perfect. So you're inevitably going to have some of those weeds that do pop up, but using that pre-emergent, you should really be able to cut a lot of that down just from the very, very start of the season. Again, putting us more into that playing offense rather than playing as much defense. You can't just play offense. If anybody's played sports, you also got to play some defense too. I was a soccer guy, so you got to play a little bit of both. Football might be a little bit different. And the third mistake is scalping the lawn on the first mow. And this goes right back into previous step 6 of taking only 1/3 of that blade off at a time. After a long winter, it's easy to go aggressive on that first mow, setting that deck low in order to clean everything up. This is what is called scalping, and it puts an immense stress on your turf. It shocks the crown of your plant where the new growth comes from. It can wipe out its energy storages, and one single bad mow early on can set you back for at least the beginning of your season. Now let's start high, we'll mow regularly, and remember to only take off about 1/3 of that growing blade. And this is how I am building a thick and lush lawn that kind of naturally will help just choke out weeds to where we don't really need to use much of any herbicides throughout the season. The secret to a great green lawn in the spring is to stop guessing and start measuring. Your lawn is giving you that signal. The 55-degree mark is the official starting gun for the entire season. And this tells you the exact timing to put down your pre-emergent and start that 6-step strategic plan to get yourself ready. So stop looking at your calendar, stop looking at what your neighbor Dave is doing, and start looking at your soil temperatures. It's really the only signal that matters. Get your pre-emergent timing right, and you've really probably already won 90% of the battle against crabgrass and your other various weeds. Now, here's your homework. Go out and get soil temperatures right now. Obviously, some of my friends out there, you guys are buried in snow. Obviously, doesn't really apply to you. But for those of you that don't have any snow or don't have frozen temperatures right now, go out there and start probing the soil just to see where you're at, just to see what things are looking like. Kind of get yourself a little bit of a time frame. I know it's only February right now, so I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it doesn't hurt to kind of start planning and starting to kind of just see where things are at. All right, now that you guys have gotten your soil temperatures, thank you so much for being here. I hope that my 6-step plan and the 55-degree rule that I go by is helpful and effective for you guys and trying to curb all of those weeds that I know that I tend to deal with. So we're going more on the offensive this year. And if you found this information to be helpful, again, I'd really appreciate you give me a thumbs up and give me a follow for more information like this. And I hope that you'll tune in for the next video that we have posting. So thank you very much again for being here. Appreciate you. God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.